Peace to the island, check it out now. From the salad seed to the giant fir trees, we're blowing through the speakers like a west coast breeze. Not the 99, not the status quo. We the 5% tribe with the red groove flow. Deep roots in the soil, eyes on the stars. Vancouver Island vibes in every one of these bars. It's the elite frequency, the top tier view. A little bit of us and a whole lot of you. Elevate your mind.
Okay, welcome to the 5% podcast. The first time we've ever done a virtual edition. Very exciting. Thank you for joining us. To our special guest, Greg rhymes with Book Nuk. And a little background, Greg and I have known each other for a billion years. My second round of EO was with Greg and Forum and a thing that used to be called Catalyst, which got replaced by Entrepreneurs Organization Accelerator, or the EOA program, which is where Greg conned me into eventually being I think a co-chair, moderator, something or other, and then eventually helping actually drive the acceptance of the EOA program, which is now in its second year. Would you kindly, sir, provide a little bit of background, your professional background?
Thanks, Jude. Let's see. Well, first to correct.
Are we going to start the podcast like this already? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I got to correct a somewhat inaccurate statement. So here's the deal: is I could see after a bunch of time with Jude that he was a natural born leader.
Oh, here we.
And as opposed to conning him into a servant leader role within EO, I really invited him and really hoped he said yes, because he's a natural servant leader. So that's my version of the story.
Well,
how it went.
That's fine. That's fine. I got you at 9.3. You got me at the better intro, so we're even. We'll see how the most winningest podcast ever ends up. Can you and on, like, I'm asking because it's great for people to know, because my mom and her friends might be watching this, but we haven't chatted in a while. For the people that don't know, tell us about Copper Teams, and then tell me about how it's been going lately, please.
Okay, cool. So I think our second core value at Copper Teams is humility first, ... because ego will always stalk us. And so what I want to say is, I think we've found the mythical creature, also known as product market fit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's very exciting.
It could be. It could be. I mean, we're on a mission to help people globally. And I guess what I could tell you is that when we started out this, it was really, I got to the point in my life where I was like, oh my goodness, there's just so much chaos when we're in teams. And you and I have talked about this. It's nobody's fault, because if we look back through K-12, university, most organizations, we're actually not taught how to be highly effective together. They just jam us together and say, figure it out, which is somewhat odd to us, because they don't do that with calculus. They don't do that with marketing. They don't do that with anything else that's complex and requires skill and practice and failure and, all sorts of things to actually build a robust skill. And if it's true that maybe being really effective together, it doesn't matter what organization, it's a group of well-intentioned human beings trying to do something. If that's like a top 5 life skill for all of us, wow, what a miss in our societal curriculum. And so the stats are something like 75% of teams execute like 50% slower than they could, and 75% have significant dysfunction. Absolutely nobody's fault, right? Nobody's fault. So like that was the mission that I started with in 2022. And the engineer, the recovering engineer in me, that's how I identify now, as a recovering engineer who's fallen in love with people.
I like it. It's awesome.
Was like, well, teams and what happens between us, it's just a complex thing like anything else. And so really, they don't teach us much in engineering school other than how to think critically about complex problems.
Yeah.
So the first step was a single question like, I wonder what the research says about all of the elements that might be highly correlated with highly effective teams. And so, because we got to be able, if we're going to do something about this challenge that most of us face, because when I ask audiences, whatever they are, it really doesn't matter whether it's investors or keynotes or clients. Has anybody experienced, a meeting that they wanted to, they'd rather not be there, or maybe even like pound bamboo slivers under their fingernails is something better? They're like, oh, it's terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's, so the first thing we got to do if we're going to do something about that situation that seems common to all of us is measure. Like, we actually need to know what's going on, because most of the stuff going on between us is invisible. And it's affecting us, but it's invisible. So that was the first thing. So we took 2.5 years. It was a way bigger, harder thing than I anticipated to actually synthesize the research, build it into a robust, reliable assessment that output something visual, because no one reads 60-page reports, right?
No,
and so
no.
Seems
not especially
like that
with AI, not a chance. People will read the summary of the 60-page report.
Yeah, well, and we basically made it in pictures. Pictures, which happen to be a much richer form of communication than text. But anyway, so then we went to market, and first we were offering much too big of a solution. It was a total solution. Hey, we'll measure your team, and then we'll help you go on a journey to become, amazing at execution. And people love that idea. And the other businesses, Jude, and this, they were businesses. They weren't innovation businesses. So my learning curve in this has been ridiculous. And, one of the hard lessons right up front was people will say, oh, that's really cool. That's amazing. I'm so glad you built this, this whole system. And then they get to the, 5-figure price tag as the first engagement, and basically very few yeses. So it was too hard to buy. It was too big of a bite in the beginning. And I just didn't understand that. My team didn't understand that. So that was the first big lesson. And the other lesson that was inside that is, we feel quite confident now. We've got lots of experts around us that have confirmed this. They've basically said, learning and development is seen by most businesses and most business leaders as a nice to have, not priority, not a have to have. And even though it's kind of wild that like our ability to execute drives all of the hard metrics that we're going for, it still goes into the nice to have and not prioritized and not purchased. So the big pivot, and going back to possibly product market fit, is we're really, really focused on the language now about what we do. Is we help teams execute faster on the hard metrics. Right. So it's about hard business outcomes, and the sort of product innovation that ties into that is we only sell the team assessment now as a subscription. So just like you do quarterly financials, you do a quarterly team effectiveness check-in, right? Because how effective we are today at executing will drive what happens in future quarters. And something like team effectiveness is nothing but static, right? You and I could get into a big dust up, right? Our bro teasing could go too far, and we could destroy the team vibe in an afternoon.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it becomes a new strategic execution metric. And that's where people are buying. They're like, I make the case that the world focuses on 50% in general of what it takes to execute. And that's all the tactical stuff, plans, strategies, KPIs, push, all that stuff. The other 50% of what it takes to execute is the harder part. And it's the human side of execution. And I think because we've had a lack of tools maybe in the past, people have, especially more left brain analytical leaders, typically they've been like, I don't want to touch the touchy-feely. But now we've created a way to measure that, quantify it, so that people can have objective discussions about what's going on. and have a metric that you track over time. So I believe that over time, what we're going to see is the quarterly updates with financials will be married with this execution metric. Like it'll be one of the things on the dashboard or the scorecard, right? Because it's the human side of getting anything done. And it's nobody's fault. There's just a ton of chaos there. And so
can you run me through, like, I realize, this isn't a full demo or anything like that, but for people who sort of wonder what that looks like, what that actually sounds like, do you want to just run us through like what one of these meetings might look like or how different they are in terms of the sort of metrics that you would be looking at?
I can. Yeah, we can go wherever for sure. So when you say one of these meetings, can you? What's your
sorry?
thought?
You were saying every quarter, instead of just having the check-in like this, we'd actually have the human side stuff that actually drives this stuff. Like, or if it's more useful or able to better explain it, how does this like effectively change how people look at their metrics on quarterly or whatever their periods are?
Awesome. Okay. So the assessment is done quarterly. It's 30 minutes long. It's anonymous and all of us do it. So we're providing, and we're not evaluating each other as individuals. We're evaluating this concept called the team that sits between us. There's a lot of researchers that suggest that the team is the base unit of organizational performance. And we align with that. That makes sense, right? Individuals contribute, but you can have a bunch of individual contributors that do not win as a team. Right? Happens in sports, all-star teams that, don't win anything, happens in business. So just, we all need to contribute, but how we play together is a totally different thing. I'll just go back one step. So this is an assertion that we believe in, talked about 50% as being missed. And this is the graphic that we have so far to show that point, is the world's really focused on tactics. But what we do together, the human side of execution, and a way to measure that is not many leaders in like multi-billion-dollar companies or SMEs. Not many folks none have disagreed with this idea that, the human side of execution is key and it's hard.
I remember when you were moderating an EO meeting that I was in, and you asked the room, how many people here in any job at any point in their life did practice meetings? Not a hand went up. And the best part is obviously you didn't care about how many hands went up. All of us thought about how ridiculous that is. And it hit us immediately how important meetings are. And we never practice them. We show up and wing it every time. It's astounding.
Oh, okay. Don't let me forget. So one other thing that we did is we stood up in this last, like since we've been together here, we stood up a practical AI skills training course called the AI Edge. And we did it because we saw the stat that Canada was second last in AI adoption for companies. And so now we've partnered with the BC Chamber of Commerce. It's province wide. There's hundreds of people in it. And don't let me forget this. We just built, we call them edge tools. And right now it's a custom GPT, but I think we're going to flip it into software. A single edge tool that we call the meeting mentor does 5 things for you around meetings, like analyzing their effectiveness, helping you build the agenda and clarify your thinking for the next one, upgrades to yourself, and then helping you move past procrastination for when you get assigned a giant task. Anyway, this is just for sharing at this point, because to your point, again, who has been trained how to be wizards at meetings?
Yeah.
Very, very few. And when we ask those questions, how many people struggle with meetings and would rather not be there? All hands go up.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Like, whoa. Anyway, so back to the experience. So this, what you're seeing here is one of the layers of the report onion, and a report's only 4 pages. And this is real data from a senior leadership team in the States. And so essentially what you're looking here is we're measuring, so we do this quarterly, it takes 30 minutes. Some people were like, 30 minutes is huge. And we just asked them the question, we're like, is it possible in your team that over 3 months that you guys might spend, 5 additional hours than necessary, that wasted time? Like if it's a team of 5, do you spend collectively 1 hour wasted time over a quarter? And they're like,
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding? I'm like, yeah, well, that's what is the math? That's 6 times what it takes to invest the 30 minutes in actually getting some data so that you can waste less time. Right. So the math, the ROI is simple. So you do the assessment, it all comes in. We've invested significantly to build enterprise grade software to generate these reports. They're only 4 pages long. And so what you're looking at here is the difference between Q4 for this senior leadership team and Q1. And I guess let's not go into like crazy detail today, but essentially what you're looking at here is we've measured 30 variables that are research backed to high performance teams. And in this presentation, we've condensed them into what we call 10 essential team dynamics and showed you where you were last quarter and showed this team where they've grown to. And you can see both progress and regression here on the various elements. Okay, and the red dots, if anyone's looking at that, are outliers. And we talk about the outliers as gold mines or landmines. So you're getting this data, this signal, and it all rolls up to a total team effectiveness score at the top. So you're getting this signal every quarter. And then really, because everybody's busy, all we suggest is, and we have tools and guides for this, is pick one element, one skill, and agree as a group what we're going to work on in the next quarter in the flow of work. No extra stuff, not going to any different place. What's one thing that's going to move the needle? And that's what we work on. And so
I'm just looking at this. This is super interesting. And obviously I don't know what everything means, but I'm looking at the fourth metric. And that appears to be the biggest delta between the outlier. I'm assuming that's something that you'd be zooming in on to find out, because the other ones are mostly very close. Or they appear to be close, right? The outliers are perhaps less of a concern. It probably means a lot more than I would understand, but that looks pretty interesting. The difference there between that outlier. What sort of, when you experience things like that, what does it usually mean, or what could it mean? What are the variety of things it might mean?
Thank you. That's a sharp observation, Jude. So that's a free win for you, right?
I'll take it.
But it really is. Yeah, because that's what this is all about. And actually the data, the visual data here does tell the real story, because we were also training this team in a facilitation capacity. We had a 6-month contract with them. So we actually know that the data ties to the reality. So on E4, on the essential dynamic of how clear are they and aligned on the goals that they have for the quarter as a team, in Q4, they weren't aligned at all. They just really had no idea what they were doing together. But the CEO did a phenomenal job of co-creating the goals with the team, writing them down, reducing them from 14 to 3 or 4. And so you can see the growth is when the team was asked, what are your goals for the quarter? They all knew what they were.
Oh, wow. Right? That's a huge improvement.
Oh, it's massive.
Yeah.
Except for one person, and that's the outlier here. And that was the newest person on the team that had just joined.
Oh, so great story. Perfect.
Yep.
Best result you can have for that sort of data, instead of having, well, this person's grumpy, refusing to get on board, and is currently toxic, trying to exit the organization.
Yeah, well, and it's also a super quick win, right? Because that person can be brought up into the team average for understanding of the goals, like in half an hour. Awesome.
Yes.
Okay. But that sort of hard metric stuff and the story for this team, you can see the growth up here in the formula. They increased their hard metric score because they got clear on their goals, like legit. Like we're talking profit, revenue. They increased it by like 50%, right, in one quarter. The news that also comes out of this, though, is in that hard push, while mostly ignoring what was going on with the people, we ended up with 3 people that were saying they're at 20% on energy and enthusiasm and well-being on this team. And so they pushed super hard on the metrics. They succeeded for a quarter, but the team, because we were with them, was coming apart at the seams. And So the question that just jumped right out of the data and the conversation was, how sustainable is that hard metric performance? And the answer is, unless they made changes, it was absolutely not sustainable.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just had a meeting yesterday with a couple of people that are trying to get involved in EO, and one of the companies specializes in sort of more on the HR side, but contracts, conflict resolution, disputes, those sorts of things. And then the other gentleman was from a company that basically has the software that backs all that stuff up. But looking just sort of at those metrics, and when I think about that first graphic that you showed up, where you're talking about skills and team skills and motivations and things like that, how does this beyond you just being a better team? One of the things that I've learned from a variety of people, yourself included, is just like the importance of being transparent, clear, honest, but making sure that you're vulnerable. And we have found that when there's vulnerability, which can only happen with trust, in my experience, then I don't want to too technical, but I think the technical term here is that's when the magic happens. How does this all work together? It seems to me that if you sort of went to war, as it were, if you worked really hard as a team to get all this stuff done, and then you actually started making progress, and you were literally rowing in the same direction, how does it affect all that other stuff that we're constantly dealing with as business owners in terms of HR, keeping teams happy, keeping people around, energized to do the stuff?
That's a really good question. So the first thing that comes to mind is a lot of teams and a lot of companies, they can't really answer the question, like, why are we here? Right? Like, what's our why? And there ought to be, like, ideally there's a company why. You're on some kind of a mission, and then the teams within that company have their own distinct why that is relevant to them but relates to the mothership, right? And the reason why this is so important, and in our team model, we're measuring, and in the assessment we're measuring what we call compelling vision alignment. And that's like, are we all aligned, rowing towards something that we find exciting and inspiring, right? And if each of us answer yes, then it's like, okay, cool. How aligned are we on that? Is right, because it's really ideal if it's all sort of a similar thing. And the research is really clear that if you and I are on a team and we're totally stoked about the mission, that's our ultimate battery. It gives our work meaning and purpose. And we'll give 110%, right? Even when we didn't, we thought 100 was max, there's more. Right. And no one has to ask us. And as long as there's not a bunch of other craziness happening on the team that could destroy the value of being aligned on that, right? And that's why we have to look at it in an integrated way. We'll stay, because meaning and purpose behind our work is... it goes right back to Viktor Frankl, man's search for meaning, and that work. We seek it. We need it to thrive as human beings. And it's really sad to me that so many organizations and so many teams haven't found that yet. So that's actually one of the DIY learning modules we've built, is how do you rapidly find and align around a compelling vision for any team? And we can do it in 4 steps.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off. It's such a deep area in this. I mean, it's deep in a variety of senses, but I mean, there's so many topics and there's so many different places you can go. I just had my my forum meeting this week, a couple of days ago, and half of us, our parking lot item had to do with, based on what I've just done or where I'm at right now, or this thing that's just faced me in my life, what is my why? And it's neat to see people like me that have smaller companies, are going through growth stages, figuring things out. And then you see people that are quite mature, been with a company for well over a decade, have had an exit, and they're facing exactly the same question as they're sort of wondering like, what's next after the exit or whatever this looks like. We actually had an interesting thing. We just had our EOA learning day, and it was strategy. And there's only 3 EOA members. I mean, I act as a 4th because I do both, but the room was absolutely full. We made sure to market it properly. The room was absolutely full. And it's easy to be nervous about, will we have product market match here with all the different size businesses? But it was exactly the same as my forum meeting. All the people that showed up, it was either a founder who was sort of hands off, but was feeling like they didn't have enough insight into their own business and wanted to get back to basics. We had the same thing with people that had exited. We had a bunch of people who had just started new companies, but everybody was asking that same question: why am I here? And this was a thing that we'd sort of identified that's being really overlooked. Especially like an EO or EOS, pardon me, you really, really focus on your VTO. What's your vision? What's your mission? What's your core values? All that stuff. And there's such a focus on the business, you sort of forget about yourself, and sometimes you wake up and you're wondering, I might even really love what I'm doing, but why am I doing it again? I think it's a fairly important question. I think you've scratched on a lot of that stuff as we've been chatting.
Yeah, and dude, I've got that T-shirt. Businesses 1 and 2 were businesses, and I talk about it in terms of like I think about it in terms of inner and outer alignment, right? So the first business, because I was young, pretty much had inner outer alignment, and it was awesome, and it was a rocket ship, and it was successful. The second business was totally different, right? And you know this story. There was not inner alignment with what we were doing on the outer business side, and ultimately that was, I think, one of the big reasons where I drove myself to getting sick.
Yeah,
it is the why on the inside was, there was no why. It was, I'm just doing this because I can, and what a difference now! Like, to be in the service of human beings now with copper teams, so it's the business and what's inside, and there's no difference. The inner and outer are totally aligned, and I get tired, but I don't get exhausted anymore.
I like that. I like the inner and the outer alignment. I was a friend of mine, Chris, he's from Las Vegas. We're hoping to see him soon at a conference, but when we were chatting and I was sort of talking about some of the feelings I was having about some changes we were making. And he asked me, how's your fit? And I said, well, I think we've had product market fit for a while. I think it's getting better. We've never had product market fit in terms of like a rocket ship or anything like that. But, generally when I meet people, and if they fall into what I would consider ICP, usually we win. And he said, oh, no, I don't mean that. I'm like, oh, what do you mean? And his version, or the way his vernacular anyway, for inner and outer alignment is product market founder fit. And I have just glommed onto that and taken credit for it multiple times, as one does, looking for wins. But I loved that idea. And that was really like Logan and I waking up one day and saying, especially me, because all of the following up for people that aren't paying, that follows on me. And it's easy to sit here and just complain about people that don't pay. And you should. If you have a contract with somebody, you should be paid, you're obligated, all that stuff. But at the same time, no, there's not a single person who, I hope, that didn't pay us because they got up in the morning and thought, I'm going to do a bad thing to these people out there in the world just because. There's a situation and it's rough. And some of them are really rough where you're like, oh my gosh, we will just... good luck. We're going to exit stage right, if we can't help it at this point. And then, but all that aside, we knew it was not sustainable to we're not hiring a full-time admin to start following up bills. And also it was just not a business we wanted to be in. And while we didn't verbalize it like like you've talked about today, or like Chris talked about the product market founder fit, that's what it was. It was no longer for a fit as us as founders, the business as it was. We were just not interested in working with people that were unable to pay us, as crazy as that may sound. And that's why we made the big change we did with sort of like, I love to call it shred as a service, the subscription pricing where you actually get paid while you're doing the work, rather than like throwing that Hail Mary and hoping that you might get paid. But it's been a massive lift off the shoulders. All the stuff we're worried about before, that is gone. Now we're focusing on the stuff we like to do. It's been good, but the biggest takeaway was actually having me think about, that's great, you might have a product market fit. Is this business a fit for you personally? Does this fit with your personal why and all the stuff, that comes with?
That's awesome. Can we pull on that thread for a sec? Because I'm curious now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What do you want to know?
Okay. So this concept has been grown to PMFF, right? Product market founder fit. And so,
we actually, technically it's PMF squared. Just, I don't want to correct you in front of everybody, but yeah, PMF squared.
Yeah. I'm the engineer, remember?
Yeah, it's true. I better be careful. We might get into math. I'll get in trouble.
So your experience of this, and I'm curious about the founder. Like the question is, okay, if we get on board to PMF squared, good for concepts. Now how? Right?
Yeah.
How might we go about that? So what's your experience been since you heard the concept? What is going on with you cognitively, energetically, to have you thinking that, if I got you right, that, I think I've this is a much improved PMFF than it was before. What has the human experience been for you?
Yeah, so I can't remember exactly what it was, because it was probably, but this is still very recent. Like we're talking 4 to 6 months where this whole thing has been changed. But there was a break, whether it was like a long weekend where it was sort of back to back. We got the Friday and Monday off, where Logan and I actually got a second to think. And we had just gone through a thing with a client once again where they couldn't pay us, and it was fairly significant. And then someone who couldn't pay us, they were wrapped up in an accountant. We very much don't like to make life difficult for third-party accountants because they're great lead sources. And also we know the accountant well enough to know that he also is not being paid, so for us to like just piece out was sort of a rude thing. But there was a lot of pain is what I'm getting at. There's a lot of pain at a very specific point, followed by time off for us to think. And there was actually no intention to go away and think about reinventing it. It was just, we were each very unhappy with the situation. And then like the Monday morning, we're so used to working, we get on a call, and Logan just said something like, wouldn't it be great if people just paid us? And I was like, well, yeah, but you've always said that's impossible. My EO forum suggested that years ago, and I told everyone that's impossible, you can't do that. And he's like, are we wrong? And then I was
I remember you not listening to us.
100%. Yeah, because it's funny. It's multiple forums who talk to me about that, right? And I would just be like, you guys don't even know what you're talking about. Like, nobody does that. So you're suggesting I'm going to be the first shred company to charge up front? Come on, guys. Like, this is a professional business forum. We don't need these ridiculous thoughts and ideas. Actually, you're on a timeout. You're not even invited to the next meeting. Leave. That was me. That was my attitude, just to like all these people that, because I've had so many successful businesses, right? Obviously, I should know, right? And then we finally experienced enough pain where we're like, the options are stop it, because we're not interested in doing this anymore. You alluded to being like the difference of being tired and the other thing, whether it's overwhelmed, not enjoying it, dreading it, that was starting to creep in. And that was not my experience for most of the almost 6 years we've been operating. I'm just like, love what we're doing. and it's probably mostly the startup thing. There's always something new to do, right? But it was now turning into, because now we're sort of like an execution land. Well, execution land, a lot of it is just every week following up on invoices. And I'm just like, I don't want to do that. And then we just, we had to do some rebranding because we had an issue, but Bloom, as you can imagine, is not an original name. We're so many Blooms, we couldn't get any trademark. We had another company out east who used to be all about a specific government grant. Then they found out there's money in Shreds. They started doing what we're doing, and we're wasting our Google Ads money. So as we were shifting to shred.ca and doing the hotels.com thing, we decided, let's just go all in. Let's try the subscription model. Let's put it out there and just see what happens. And, like not even 60 days later, we have 4 brand new people who'd never heard of us before, who looked at all the competitors, looked at us and said, yeah, we'll go with you. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, we didn't just say, hey, we're now going to collect money up front. What we said, we actually looked at the data and we found out we'd been lying to ourselves, telling ourselves like the average invoice was about $22K. But we were not including all the, like, if you didn't get invoiced, you didn't show up in the metrics, which is completely not the whole story, right? It's not even close to the whole story. So we went and actually looked at the metrics and we found out that actually our real invoice is somewhere between 15 and 17. So we thought, okay, well, what if we advertise the real price, call it 15 grand, which is what we did. That means like the average invoice for somebody who's got a $300,000 shred claim, which is right around what the average is in the country. That person's playing, like we just did an invoice for someone whose effective rate was 4.9% for about that amount of shred, right? It's easy to do the math. It's a very attractive thing for our ICP. And if our ICP is someone who's doing it, someone who's got cash flow, everything's all good, for them, paying more doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And so it's an absolute no brainer. And that it's also been nice because we've niched. There's a lot of people who look at us and they're like, yeah, that's not good. And we're so honest about it too. We're like, hey, here's how we do it. Here's how a lot of other people do it. In fact, if you want names, we're happy to send you over there. If you need a bit of a loan until the end, you want to take that from a shred consultant, you can do that. That said, the way we work things, we could actually put you in touch with somebody who's a professional at this and charges less. And you can actually work with us and then borrow money quarterly and then pay less. And our total rate plus the people borrowing money is actually less than that shred consultant would charge you, but
this is a brilliant competitive strategy, right? Your spidey senses go up that they're not going to pay until you introduce them to somebody else.
100%. This literally happened 3 days ago. And we are like high-fiving each other because we would have worked for this person for a year before we realized there's a problem. Now, when we say, okay, great, there's the payment link and we get crickets, we know they don't have any money. And because you don't have money doesn't mean you're bad, you're a bad customer. It's just, you're just not a fit for us. That's it. We have no judgment. But, there's definitely.
But going back to this thing, because I find it really interesting, the how, the concept of this double F is the why, like what's the fit for us? It's what I heard you say. Tell me if I got this right. Is that there was some space, right? So it gave you some space for, and what happened in the space? Did something bubble up? Like I think there's something really interesting here. What happened in the space? Why did this come to the front, this major change idea in the space? What happened in the space?
It was just not getting paid. Not getting paid coupled with having a few days off. We were actually able to breathe and have some time and talk and not talk about the stuff on the L10, actually just talk about how are we feeling? We talked about how we're feeling and we realized both of us were not feeling good. Right. Yeah. And all the mojo we usually have about, hey, let's do this. And what if we did this? And what about this type of business? And all the stuff that we usually do as two, in the world of EO, both of us have visionary in us. And so that's a very fun conversation, dangerous at times, but it's a fun conversation when two people get together and just yep, about all these shiny new things. Those conversations are dead. I was like, okay, did you call ABC Co? Like, are they paying us? Have they just disappeared? Okay, well, you better call the collection agency. Should you put some nasty things on LinkedIn? Oh, I don't know. Well, who cares? They're never going to pay us anyway. Might as well go for it. Mm-hmm. And now you're one of those people. And it's
Reminds me, I've got a very, very dear friend who told me a couple of years ago, and I think he's still there. He runs a big company in the States now. And he said, Greg, I spend 50%. He's a CEO. It's, they're over a B. And he says, I spend, he's an employee, right? He didn't found it, right? But he's a CEO. And he says, I spend at least about 50% of my work life in litigation.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, dude, how is that for you?
Yeah.
And he sounds resigned to it, as like it's part of the deal. But if we go back to not even founder fit, but like job fit, and this thing about feelings, I think about this a lot, and and that's why I was curious about this space. So I've come to the, I guess, feeling or position that this thing, right, is a pretty good meat computer, right, for analysis, but it's not wise. But the feelings part, wherever they manifest in our bodies, and this is just what I've understood through the reading and life experience and stuff. I'm not proposing that this is true, but I think what the feelings are is actually our intuition. That's how our intuition speaks to us, through feelings. But especially men, we have like such a strong orientation to cognitive meat computer dominance that we just, there's nothing below the neck.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
And maybe that space allowed time for the recognition of some feelings that were actually the subconscious, the wise subconscious that was integrating all the stuff that was going on and speaking to you.
Yeah.
And if that's true, that's like a learnable skill or approach maybe anybody could use to find this double F, right? Like how do you feel, like when you have a little bit of space, how do you feel about the current situation? Because and dude, I just had one of these, and it's helped me break a pattern that I've failed at for like years. Is there time? Do you want me to tell us?
Please tell me, please. Okay.
My mom, so second business, this, pushed too hard, right over the cliff, got sick, sold, blah, 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 all that. And in the rebuild, lots of insights. And my mom is so smart. And one of the quotes that stuck to me, she's like, Greg, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of me driving myself to unhealth, right, was doing it all, like move the family to China, build a multinational company with no capital, blah, 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 do all the things, be on 3 boards, stuff. And so the fail pattern for me is super clear. Was the word moderation didn't exist for me. Like at all. And there, when you go into the psychology of like what that is, that's interesting. But so the story right now that just happened, like literally in the last week, is about a year ago, Bess and I said, in 2 years from now, we want to move to this little town in France for a year. With the boys, because they're 9 and 11 now, and give them like open their minds, right, more globally before they start to go into high school and like decide where they're going to go. And so for the last year and a half, we've been on this mission. And so this summer we did it. We went to this little town in France. We did the recce, visited schools, like we were preparing for 2027 when we'd go. And then I got home and Beth said, well, so are we going to make the final decision? Because it means hiring French tutors, so the kids can go to school, getting entrepreneur visas, getting, renters, clearing out our house, finding a place, like massive project, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I want to sit with it, for a while. And it took a few months here because we had that time. But essentially something dawned on me like last week, like, why is this exciting project of move to France with the family for a year feeling so heavy? It just feels heavy.
Yeah.
And so I've built a GPT project that is a like a co-CEO. It's like, it's a clone of me with all sorts of knowledge base and blah 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 blah. And so I went to it as a thought partner, and I was like, hey, you know what, coach me, dialogue. Don't tell me what I want to hear. Right? I'm struggling with this thing. It's feeling heavy. It's weird because it should be exciting. And in the end, it helped me realize that they're like, oh, sounds like you through the conversation it got to, are you repeating the pattern? Right? And I'm like, damn. Yep. And so what we came up with is, rather than all the ridiculous energy and pressure and project of like uprooting and moving, for a year, and even to the point of doing that to my son who's entering the social phase of his life, when I hated that my parents did that to me at the same time. Right. Ignore that. It's going to be awesome. Ignore it. Right. All of that. My co-CEO GPT and I came up with, well, maybe there's a different way to do this. How about we just do a summer there and maybe a month, in Mont Blanc for winter. Like a week, a month, but not move and, not do that whole thing. You're still going to open the eyes. It's way less easier. And as soon as I got to that, it was like the weight evaporated. It felt like breath. And I was like, oh, that's it. Right. So
Yeah.
I couldn't understand it here, but now, because I kind of forced, that's one of the beauties about getting sick and then taking a hard look at what got you there is, as I can hear that the feeling energy now, and don't really know what it means all the time, but it's a signal now, where before that signal did not come through. And I think it applies to this whole thing about fit, whether you're in a job or you're growing a company. I think the intuition signal is.
So I was the deep dive presenter at the forum.
Oh,
and I'm one of between me, Kevin, and Raj, we are the most, everybody else in our forum except for us three is only in their second year. And so it's a new forum trying to find their way. So when it's everything I do with this forum, it's with the idea of modeling and really going as far as you can and making sure that your 5% reflections are phenomenal, like finding that 5% somewhere, making sure your deep dives are amazing. And, I had both those things up and I shit the bed on both of them. And it wasn't intentional. Like if you see my 5% reflection in my book, it is crammed with writing. And that's what I do too, is I actually set up a GPT and I just interview and dig until I find something. And often I go through this thing, I'll finally find some emotion, which I find very, very, very challenging in deep dives. That's probably another issue. But when I do find it, and I think I've written it down and I've got clear asks, I do not review it. I think it's so good at the time. And then I get into the meeting and as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my God, you are still surface. Right. But there is this signal that I am getting. So long story short, anybody within earshot of me has heard the story. But was having breakfast with a friend. He works for a commercial laundry place. It sounds like, and this place is huge. I mean, honestly, every commercial laundry place on the island is all huge. These are all giant corporations, some of which are multinational. And like huge, giant businesses, they are not, they're well-funded, they're capitalized, everything else, but they don't do well with quick changes. They don't often react to the market quickly. They can't. There's a lot of things they can't do. We started chatting. I thought, hey, this is a cool opportunity. And I've been faced with this, hey, this new opportunity is really cool. Let's check it out. I did some market analysis. There may be something there. I need a lot more information. But that quickly got to some sort of conversation in my mind of like, who do I think I am? Thinking I could own multiple businesses, or thinking I could be, good enough to figure one of these things out. Like there's some self-doubt, there's some self-worth. But it's still, I haven't figured out, like there's like, just like you said, there's a signal there. I know there's something there. I haven't quite figured out what the thing is. And I was even telling my forum when I went to do this, I said, guys, I know how this is going to come across, and I know deep dives are always a crisis thing, but it's not a crisis. I don't need 5 people telling me how great I am and I can do it and all that stuff, right? Like I appreciate that because I know you guys would do that, but that's not what I'm looking for. I am very much struggling to find out what is the hesitation here. And I said all the normal things like, hey, the shred.ca thing, like, we're past the initial quick growth. We're now doing the slow growth, but we're doing 15 to 20% a year and I make good money and et cetera, et cetera. Maybe, am I worried about that? But like, to me, even that is too surface. Like, that's such an obvious thing. Like, hey, I'm thinking about starting this other thing. Okay, well, that could be dangerous. The other thing, like, obviously that could have, be bad. Right. But I only bring it up because it's still unresolved, and I haven't done that, but I am going to create a GPT coach. I often just do it through the regular chat, but I had not created a specific GPT for that intention. I bet if I search, there's probably ones created by EO people for this exact thing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get the prompt. And then, of course, as you know super well, like the context then becomes super meaningful, right? Mm-hmm. So like much you've used your GPT and the knowledge base you've given it and those sorts of things. Because I think the coaching efficacy is really, really closely tied to that. Mm-hmm. The more it knows about you and all that stuff. And the thought that came forward is like, I wonder if psychedelic augmented AI personal coaching would be an accelerant to the unblocking.
That would be interesting. Well, I have some psychedelics at home. I might have to give it a shot. Greg Nuk prescribing psychedelics on the pod. Perfect. Thank you, sir.
See you at the border.
Hey, so let me shift gears a little bit. I know, and you get when do you need to get off here? How much time do you have?
Good. It's for that it's a better business when you've wrapped all your major commitments, money's okay, and you've told the company to shut down for 2 weeks at Christmas. So, I'm there, Dan.
Yeah. This is it for me. I'm looking forward to the break as well. Actually, it's funny enough. So out of this thing, myself, Alex Armitage, and Kevin Kotorinsky, we have started this business evaluators group. We were meeting for our first meeting on Monday. So there's an outcome. Alex has already provided a template because he's been shopping. And it's not supposed to be like a lead gen group. It's just like if you've come across something, and you feel like I do, which self-doubt about any decision I make around this thing, because I think in this particular regard, if I'm looking at a new business, I don't have any experience at this at all. And so I love having a template and I love being able to put it in front of a couple of other entrepreneurs. What are your thoughts? This is all that. And it's sort of like forum, or it's actually like EOA in the sense it's like an issue statement that you bring the information and you bring where you're going to go or what you think. And then they provide some information and coaching based on that. So I'm excited. And then on top of that, somebody from EO has made a VTO, but the personal version, it's a slight tweak on a VTO. And that is my personal goal with the holidays, is hit that hard and then reevaluate. Because it sort of came out our discussion that I like the idea of starting businesses, executing, once it's sort of set up, not... And I would say that's probably like 98% of entrepreneurs. This is not a new idea, but so the thought of having multiple businesses is very exciting. I also like the idea of getting away from a business that, in my opinion, is going to have so much pressure in the next 10 years from AI. I would love to get to something that is for a lot longer going to be AI proof. There's lots of robotics and robotics AI, but like you do reports for a living. That's scary.
Yeah. So I think that's super wise, man. It seems like even like native AI businesses, and you see this like from true blue experts out there, around, they have no moat.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
even,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that's native AI businesses, not even businesses that do traditional stuff that can be automated by AI. Like there's the whole, like, to not be thinking through that lens right now seems really, really risky.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only thing that we're doing in that sense is we're not trying to fight it. We're just trying to be, we're never going to be ahead, like the front of the curve, most likely, but we have multiple people working on fully automating. Um, I mean, we've been trying this for well over 12 months and it's a disaster, but, it's improved. I guess slowly getting better. You know what I mean? So I think as long as we're playing in the arena, we'll have a better chance. What I was going to ask is, I don't want to scare you, but it is the 19th of December and you have children. And no matter how they were raised, I'm going to assume that they're excited about presents under the tree. How is the Christmas shopping going? And how are you doing it?
It's basically never been done so well.
I like how you're molding yourself in. So, Jude, if you're thinking about winning this one, you're not. And I'm going to just state it up front. I'm already better than you. Just want to remind everyone whose podcast this is, by the way.
See, you took that as a winning moment. I didn't compare to you.
You know what you're doing. Don't even. You know who I am. You know who I am, you dirty son of a bitch. Yeah, he's laughing. That's right.
No, it's comparisons and competitive tension that's really not even a competition at all aside. I honestly, it's this one may form indelible childhood memories, and I'm serious. Like we're doing something different this year, and it's basically it's all together, and there's the potential to blow minds.
Oh, seriously? And am I allowed to ask now, or do you want me to ask you after?
Definitely not. We might ruin it.
Yeah, no. I think that's fair. Honestly, that has happened. So yeah, I look forward to asking. I know this isn't a new idea, but I had talked to somebody recently who it was somebody in my forum. I forget who it was, and maybe I shouldn't disclose it anyway. But not a new idea. But the idea is, yeah, we don't purchase things at Christmas. We do a big experience at Christmas, which is I'm sure where you're leaning. But the only reason we don't do that is because my lovely wife is she just doesn't like getting time off is very challenging, so it's we can't. I was actually thinking of scooping them tomorrow morning and driving up to Kelowna to see my sister. And then as I was telling the team on the morning huddle this morning, they're like, oh, that'd be great. You have heard about all the flooding and road closures, and it could snow at any second in the Coquihalla. And if it's not snow, it'll be ice. And you have your kids, and your wife probably is not going to let you go anyway. And I was like, that's a good point. Yeah. But boy, I would love to go and visit family.
I so enjoy time with you every time, man.
Oh, well, thank you. I enjoy time with you as well. Very much. Okay, so let me ask you this then. Speaking of spending time together, things sounds like going really well. Last time you and I were in an EOA group together, you had talked about you were starting to do these little meetings, and then it's amazing that's progressed to, turns out the little meeting is the thing, it sounds like. So basically all of your success is because you were in a group with me. So I think everyone understands that clearly. Now, knowing that you had such tremendous success, any thoughts in the next 3 days to 5 years of ever coming back to EO? And this isn't like you're doing very well. You have a great friend group, you got a great family. It's not like it's something you need, but it's just, inquiring minds, curious people want to know.
Thank you. I don't know.
Curious about it. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know is probably the most.
I am so grateful for the EO experience, and it was a decade, right? Wow. Like it was 10 years, and it changed my life, like in myriad ways. And I'm super, super grateful for so many things. This season, I got to the point where it was the intuition thing again. Like the signal came through. I think you want to focus on your business and your family right now. And so I went, okay, I kind of don't question the signal anymore. And Yeah, but I am always going to love human connection. And the amazing thing about EO is it's, if you really get into a good forum, that's not full of ego and positioning and, sort of phoning it in and the things that can happen in forum. It's a very special place, very special, right? For our own growth. So, oh yeah, doors wide open. I have no idea when the signal calls again, then it's totally a possibility. Yeah.
Super interesting is a new forum has just started. We had a member who you know very much, at least Tessa from Quench.
Oh, awesome.
She's supposed to leave to Australia, actually. So she joined, but it was a bit of a challenge because she is going to Australia momentarily. And she was going to have to join virtually. And as you know, typically the rules are, maybe onesie twosies, depending on your constitution, but you got to be there. But then it caused some discussion because she's a well-known quantity in the community. And there's a lot of people that really wanted to be in a forum with her, which is exactly how, I would feel. But there's just some people who aren't comfortable not having someone there virtually. But I think the fantastic output from that is they created an entirely new forum experience. And I'm not an expert on the forum experience, but basically it's virtual, except for instead of having one retreat, I believe they have 2 small retreats plus the retreat. So they're trying to have a middle ground where, we'll have these virtual meetings. We'll do our best, but we are going to get together as much as possible. And then I think they're experimenting with sort of like a Scott Phillips sort of room where if there's 7 people in this forum, I don't know how many people there is, and 5 of them are in town, those 5 could get together and the 3 could join. And that's sort of if you have one of those fancy, they're trying to figure it out because most people, at least for me, my experience is it's better if we're 100% virtual or 100% together. The in-between, I have not. Yeah, that's been my experience as well. Anyway, I don't know what they're going to do. It's not my forum. What I love, I don't think the details matter. What I love is that they're trying to make space for different types of forum experiences and different people coming in, because the world has changed, and we are excluding a lot of people without us sort of looking at is there another way forward? So I was really happy that this happened.
I think that's really encouraging, actually, because it ties into the return to office thing. And right, that whole thing is my view on that is return to office. And there are specific companies where it really, really does make sense to be all there. But most of the return to office is really about the inability to lead.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
That's what it's about. And because in that same discussion, people say, well, you can't have, a fully remote team that's totally gelled, totally cares about each other, totally rocks it. It's absolutely false. If you know how, it's 100% doable, right? And so a virtual forum to be able to create deep bonds and connections and have most, if not all, but different forum experience, totally doable. The opportunity and the devil is in the how, the details, right? Because it would be easy for it to suck too. As
totally.
Experience on remote teams, they're like, oh, it's this, that, and the other thing. Remote teams are terrible. It's like, oh no, false negative.
This is a lot. I mean, this is literally probably 2 hours minimum, but that's something a lot of people are struggling with, myself included. It's that's a big topic though, and probably I don't even know.
Let's do Christmas. Let's be with our most important people. Let's get together, not virtually.
Well, you saw what I had ready for you. Look at this. Look at that beauty.
Was I supposed to be there today?
Well, one of the things I learned today was clear communication is very important. And I failed on that one, but yes, this is the first time we're doing this format because I screwed it up by not being clear in my communication to you that this is an in-person thing. But at the same time, this this needs to happen more often. And it was all jokes aside, this is great. But you being able to log into Copper Teams and actually like give us a quick like taste of a demo, we can't do that in person. I mean, there's ways of doing it, but it's super complicated, and that's not what it's not going to happen. So,
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this. I hope that the post is not super time consuming, and yeah.
It is not. Here at 5% Studios, we are all about efficiency, and this will be out by the end of the weekend only because social calendar starts shortly, and then I got to go. But it's super fun. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for some of that deep sharing and the overview of Copper Teams. Super useful. It's awesome to connect with you. I love you tons, like a brother. Selfishly want you to join EO all the time. And there'll be all sorts of backroom deals to make sure we're in the same forum if that ever happens. I'll have to cut this part out because I get in trouble. But thanks for coming on the pod.
Merry Christmas, man. I appreciate it.
Merry Christmas to you. Please give Bess a highly appropriate hug from me, and give the kids a high five.
Right on, man. Take care.
Cheers. See you later. Bye.
See ya.